This video contains spoilers for Fire Emblem Three Houses and contains footage for various other Fire Emblem games. Three Houses is a Fire Emblem game that theoretically has it all. A story with branching pathways and more depth to it than initially meets the eye, characters who at first seem one note but you soon learn have full personalities with likes, dislikes, and usually a tragic backstory of some sort, and between battalions and combat arts bringing new and exciting ideas to the gameplay of the series and the most in-depth social system we've had in a Fire Emblem game, it all seems perfect. But with all these strengths, I have one question. Why don't I have fun when I play it? The answer to this is kind of complicated, and trust me, we will get there. But for now, let me at least tell you, it's partially my fault. My history with Fire Emblem doesn't start with Three Houses, though. It starts on the bus in middle school when someone who had become one of my closest friends throughout school showed me a Game Boy Advanced, and, not to fully date myself here, the 3DS was out, but he showed me Fire Emblem 7, and it changed my life. I would watch him play, and eventually when he picked up a copy of Sacred Stones that, in retrospect, was definitely some sort of knockoff, because whenever you reloaded a chapter, there was like a 50% chance that half of your units would transform into a different class, which sounds fine and actually kind of fun until you have to play through half the game with Erica as a floating eyeball. But watching him play these games and playing these games started my love of the series, and when I got a DS Lite a bit later, I would play one and he would play the other. Eventually, each of us got a 3DS and we played and loved Awakening. And while I don't have exact dates for most of this, I do have one. February 19th, 2016. When I somehow convinced my very Christian mother to let me buy Fire Emblem Fates, despite the footage of Camilla that was playing in the trailer in the background. I probably told her I would just skip the cutscenes or something. But why all this backstory? Well, it's to tell you that when I say I've always played Fire Emblem for the gameplay, I'm not being cheeky and covert about the fact that, especially the newer games, are full of characters with more revealing clothing than many other franchises. I didn't even read support conversations until I played Awakening, and even then, I only read the ones with the characters that I actually cared about. I followed and understood the stories of the games that I played, and the story and main tree of Awakening was part of the reason I loved it so much, but also, that game let me play with a new pair-up system, and despite the weak writing, to put it mildly, of Fates, the gameplay of all three paths was fun for me. You had to have insane builds on characters, and yeah, were some of the characters hot? I was in middle school, so you tell me. But as I got older and replayed the games I had loved for years, I started to connect to characters and get involved more deeply in the story. What started as, yeah, I like Awakening, turned into, I think Chrom and Lucina's story has more impact on me than most movies I've seen to this point, and I found a love for the characters beyond their contributions to the gameplay. So when the rumors of Three Houses were about it having multiple paths like Fates, but with more fleshed out stories and characters, I was excited to say the least. And it took place in a school, and oh my gosh, my life took place in a school. I was in high school by this point. Three Houses was the second Fire Emblem game that I picked up on day one. I chose the Black Eagles because, actually I don't want to talk about it, but I chose the Black Eagles and started playing. This is where the part that's my fault starts to come in. I feel very comfortable with saying that Silver Snow was never meant to be played first. All of my previous experience with Fire Emblem games taught me, always train your lords. So I did. I prioritized experience on Byleth and Edelgard, and then the route split happened. I'll talk about how I got on this path, and I lost Edelgard and Hubert, and they were replaced with Seteth and the Church Staff. But I don't care about Seteth and the Church Staff. I went into this game deciding not to recruit anyone from other houses on my first playthrough. I know that's strange, but I really wanted to get to know the Black Eagles, and I did. And I love these characters to this day. They all remain as some of my favorites in this game. But at the beginning of Silver Snow, I'm suddenly given these church staff units all at once that I really don't care about. I lost 2 units that I trained up and got a shotgun of units that are fine to good, but I don't have any level of connection with them. And beyond that, okay, this is a personal thing to me, but I don't like Seteth. I think it comes down to my reviews of like religious fanaticism and leaders, but I just don't like him. Him and Flame's whole deal is cool, but I've never been able to connect with him because I think I just don't enjoy talking to him or anything. Sorry, Seteth fans, but I did use him because he's really good. But then my dislike for Seteth got worse as the story continued. The game presented me with more fake choices just to be completely overridden by Seteth making choices for me. The lack of a lord for Byleth to bounce off of made their silence and kind of bland personality really emblematic, especially coming out of playing Awakening again. Beyond that, the last chapter is both out of nowhere and a major difficulty spike that I wasn't expecting after breezing through most of the game, and the overall pacing of the story was really strange. It felt more complimentary to me than like it was its own story. So For the last couple of years, my question has been, how did I not get Crimson Flower on my first playthrough? I'd been playing Fire Emblem for years, of course I would have high support with the Lord. Did I stop getting support with Edelgard because I realized she was the Flame Emperor and thought I would lose her regardless, so I should prioritize the other students? But I happened to have a save from chapter 9 of my first playthrough of Three Houses, alongside some of my other saves. And right there, it's visible. By chapter 9, I had the support requirements, which means I just didn't talk to Edelgard before chapter 11. And this actually makes way more sense, because let me tell you, I checked out of the monastery early. Despite some of my issues with some gameplay systems of Three Houses that I will probably get into later, by far the main reason I do not replay Three Houses, despite loving the characters, is the monastery sections. Unfortunately, my brain has min-max disease, which causes me to play Stardew Valley like a capitalism simulator, Minecraft as an optimization game, and the monastery like my life depends on it. The issue is, I don't really find the monastery side of the gameplay fun. I understand the appeal. It takes a lot of more menu-based systems of past games and puts them in an open-ish world area. It adds quests, lets you talk to students, train with faculty, do arena-like training battles, and more that really flesh out the characters and make it feel more like the school that it is. While past Fire Emblem games take you from battle to battle, this allows for some respite in between, and on paper, it's great. Not great for me, who is here for the battles, but it's a good system and I understand why people like it. But if you notice, I didn't mention lost items. I never engaged with the lost item system until my most recent playthrough where I was trying to farm supports. Same with gifts. For me, learning what gifts people like by accidentally giving them the wrong gifts feels like I'm making a wrong choice in a game where I know I have to make the right choices or else I won't get the supports I need in time for the battles I need them at. Is this an unhealthy way to look at the game and system? Yes, this is a me issue, not a game issue. What's kind of funny is the only game where I've ever been able to somewhat get rid of min-max brain is Persona 5, and I guess some very minor spoilers for a specific system inside of Persona 5. The next two sentences contain very minor spoilers for a gameplay system within Persona 5. Thank you. While doing Confidants on my first playthrough, I never wanted to look up the right answers. Granted, I guessed them most of the time because I felt they were more intuitive, but it's an interesting revelation that I hadn't had until writing the script, and kind of a stark contrast to the tea times of Fire Emblem Three Houses. Anyway, while I think the systems of the monastery are good on paper, and some of the problems with it are my own min-maxing tendencies, I do think a major flaw of the game is simply the amount of time it takes. I know you can theoretically ignore it, but I feel it puts you at a significant disadvantage. But the ability to ignore it is highlighted by the fact that by chapter 11 of my first playthrough, I was ignoring it. It was a system that I had fun with for the first part of the game, but quickly became bored with, so I stopped utilizing it. But by not engaging with it, I became locked into Silver Snow, and when I wanted to side with Edelgard, I couldn't. A minor problem I bring up with Three Houses, but it has been a thing in other Fire Emblem games, I think Awakening comes to mind first, is this idea of fake choices. When the game presents you with an option, but no matter what you pick, nothing in the story really changes, or even an NPC fully overrides your choice. While personally this doesn't really bug me in Awakening, I think the nature of Three Houses and being a game where there are these alternate routes, it really does. Particularly in the Black Eagles route in chapter 10, where Edelgard asks you if you would side with her, and you pass out and can't answer, and then in chapter 11, where you don't even get the choice, and the reunion where a third fake choice hits the route. And while I don't want this video to just be me complaining about Three Houses, this part really bugs me and honestly really sucks. I know that me getting Silver Snow in my first playthrough is my own fault for not engaging with the monastery system to its fullest extent, but these three separate scenes where Byleth for a moment is presented with the option to join Edelgard before that is just taken away from them and it doesn't really matter is really rough. I wanted to side with Edelgard. She was the lord that I had trained and really liked as a character, and borderline teasing me with the fact that there is a way to do it, you just messed up, now restart your whole game, to me is one of the weakest parts of the game. It made me feel like, despite choosing a house at the beginning and your units having what feels like infinite choices in classes and what skills they train in, when it comes down to it, you don't have a choice in this world. You committed to this path. It feels like Fates' Conquest, where instead of being a driving force to the plot, things are just happening around Byleth, and they just go with whatever they have told. And that was a struggle for me throughout the game, especially the Silver Snow route. I alluded to some issues earlier, but the idea of things just happen persists. Like, okay, to be honest with you, I've thought about this once a week since 2019, but do you remember the time where an airstrike just appears in Fire Emblem Three Houses? Without getting into any story discourse, because frankly, I don't want to get involved, this is the most insane thing to ever happen in any Fire Emblem game ever. Dubstep Airstrike is absolutely crazy, but it does call in the issues that I have with Silver Snow. Despite this being the only path in the game without a main lord, Byleth still doesn't do anything. Seteth just overrides your choices, which did not help in endearing him to me at all, and this compounded upon the feeling that I already had of wanting to join Edelgard but feeling like the game was stopping and teasing me with the option. Keep in mind, this is around launch. I don't even know that Crimson Flower was an option. I thought by choosing Black Eagles, I was locked into the Silver Snow route, and that doesn't feel good. You get deeper Rhea and Byleth lore, which is cool and I like that, but my main problem is the fact that Edelgard isn't even the main villain by the end of this route. Her and Hubert die and are immediately replaced with those who slither in the dark coming out of basically nowhere. And while I know they are responsible for many things in pre-timeskip portion of the game, it feels disconnected from a majority of the Silver Snow, which is presented as the fight Edelgard on the side of the church route. My issue here is it feels cheap and like a rug pull to dubstep tech world. So my first experience with the story of Three Houses wasn't great. But a friend of mine had loved the Blue Lions and had basically nothing but praise for the entire route, and I didn't want to write off the game completely because of one bad path, so I gave this game a second shot, this time with the Blue Lions. While I didn't feel the initial pull to the characters of the Blue Lions like I did the Black Eagles, I quickly warmed up to them, and despite immediately pulling Dorothea and Petra over from the Black Eagles houses, I used a majority Blue Lions units in this playthrough. In fact, I actually found I liked a lot in this route. While I was disappointed that I once again had to play the entire Academy section again, and also found disappointment in the similarities of the missions and structures, the New Game Plus mechanics allowed me to basically prestige through and turn Byleth into a powerhouse early, which I had fun with. But a lot of similar issues cropped up for me. I found myself basically skipping through the monastery, especially post-time skip, and not engaging with many of the systems, including battalions and seminars. I found that I enjoyed the story much more. I liked Dimitri and Dedue a lot, and I found the inclusion of those who slither in the dark much less forced and eye-rolly. I also enjoyed learning about the history between Edelgard and Dimitri. My friend was right, this route was much better than Silver Snow. But by the end of the game, I was skipping through everything that wasn't the main story. Even the auxiliary battles just felt like killing time before I could get to the next chapter. The amount of stalling in between every chapter was grinding the game's pacing down to a halt. I enjoyed the story, the characters, the supports, but upon second playthrough, the removal of the weapon triangle in favor of combat arts and battalions stood out more as something that I didn't super enjoy. They are good systems, I just personally preferred the old ones. Even the changes to magic and removal of tomes just felt to me like it made magic users crazy strong, and I had Dorothea walking through late game maps just fine. But people online and people I knew loved this game and enjoyed so much of it, and I know how these things work. Sometimes you just don't enjoy stuff as much as other people do. I started to think, maybe this game just isn't for me. Yes, about 6 chapters into Fire Emblem Engage, yeah, it was looking like a pretty good theory. Three Houses just is not for me. I remember the day that the review embargo lifted for Engage. I was walking out of work on my lunch break, and I hadn't pre-ordered the game because I was waiting for reviews. And while I can't find the exact reviews I saw there, I remember there being 2 main types. One, I loved Three Houses, and everything I loved about Three Houses is gone. And 2, social systems are dead, long live SRPG gameplay. Very quickly, this conversation can become gatekeepy, and I in no way want to do that. So let me just be fully clear here, as clear as I possibly can. There are a number of fans of Fire Emblem Three Houses who are just that. Fans of Three Houses whose first game was Three Houses, and that is great. I love what they have brought to the series, but by starting with Three Houses, they were given a different impression of what the series was than people who had been around previously. Three Houses leans heavily into the social systems. The monastery and the tactical RPG gameplay can sometimes be weaker or secondary because of that. And so, going forward, because of where they started, they can compare every game they play to Three Houses, which, from the perspective of someone who did not start with Three Houses, is an unfair comparison. It's kind of a Spider's Kjorg of Fire Emblem. It's very much an outlier that focuses on social systems, story, and characters over some of the details of the gameplay. On the contrary, Engage has the most basic JRPG story, even more one-note characters in the Game Boy Advance days, basically no social systems, and some of the best gameplay this series has ever had. Generally, people who loved Three Houses for its main strengths found Engage less compelling, and people who didn't enjoy Three Houses as much, because of the leaning into social systems, found Engage much more compelling. This is a broad generalization, and the hard part about this discussion online is neither is wrong. There are two groups who are expecting different things out of the same franchise. It's the most similar to the more classic Zelda fans and fans who came in around the time of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Neither group is wrong if they prefer one style of game over the other, they just each want different things out of the same series. However, there are some people who are very weird and very mean about the different games, and those people are strange and should be ostracized. In the wake of my revelation about Three Houses not being for me, I went back and read support conversations that I hadn't seen, watched how the stories played out, and talked with people about the world. Because despite the weaknesses in some routes, I still enjoyed the story and world, even if I didn't want to experience it through gameplay I disliked. Not to go back into Persona, but I've done a similar thing because I played about 2 hours of Persona 5 Strikers and realized, oh, I hate this gameplay. I tell you this, and I go over my history with Fire Emblem at the beginning of this video, and my history with Three Houses, so that when I say I loved Engage, you know that I'm not just being a contrarian and gassing up Engage while putting down Three Houses because, oh, they personified Fire Emblem. I have 120 hours in Three Houses, which is more than I have in Engage. But these are two very different games, and while not being made for two separate audiences, the nature of Three Houses being so different led many people who started with Three Houses to have different expectations going into Engage that were not met. Frankly, in a very similar way to myself going into Three Houses. But, despite the lack of depth in the story and in some of the characters, I stand by the strength of the gameplay. While I'm not sure how I feel about the break system, and I honestly go back and forth on it by the day, the return of the weapon triangle is great, and I found the rings to be a gimmick that doesn't require tons of work to initially understand, but has some depth and you can do some crazy fun stuff with it. The Somnial still held many of the monastery's strengths and weaknesses, but I found myself going to shops and that's it most of the time, and I never felt like I was at a massive disadvantage going into the next chapter. Weapon forging is fun, and while I never did too much with ring skill inheritance, I think the system is cool and would let you do some Fates level shenanigans. I'm not sure how I feel about weapons not breaking, because I think that with the forging system, it would feel less satisfying or less fun if your weapon just broke immediately, but also I think that weapons breaking is part of, like, a crucial part of the Fire Emblem loop. I'm really not sure about that one. I know why Engage is divisive. For many people, it's because it's an inverse of Three Houses, which is also very divisive, albeit for different reasons. Most people have been able to engage, no pun intended, with the conversation of the quality of Engage in a good faith manner, as I hope I have been able to do with Three Houses. But what if there was a game that wasn't an inverse, and maybe could combine both? Three Houses has been out for 7 years, so why is this video coming out now? I think it's finally time that we address the elephant in the room. Quick disclaimer and peek behind the curtain. This section of the script was written before journalists got extended hands-on experience with Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, and due to my desire to go into the game with as little external feedback about the game as possible in order to reach my own unbiased conclusions about it, I have avoided a majority of the articles and videos surrounding the game. Still, feel free to bring up this stuff in the comments, worries that I have may be addressed. I've gone through a strange arc with Fortune's Weave, and the game isn't even out yet. Fire Emblem Three Houses is the best-selling game in the franchise, and if we can be real, it's not really close. Fire Emblem Three Houses is also the most popular game in the franchise, and let's be completely real here, it isn't even close. I have my problems with the game, but I cannot deny both its popularity and its strengths. The goal of this video was not to turn you against Three Houses. The goal of this video was to say that while I see the strengths of Fire Emblem Three Houses, I also cannot deny its weaknesses. It's hard to watch a franchise that you love one thing about become its most popular for something else, and for a game that you desperately want to connect to, but simply cannot, to be its most popular game. I find the gameplay of Three Houses to not be incredibly compelling, and frankly, kind of weak when compared to many of its predecessors. While the game seemingly offers incredible options, characters tend to fall back into their archetypes, and while the story is rich and has led to almost a decade of discourse, which definitely says something about how compelling the story is, I don't feel the draw to play through every path because of the pacing issues that I feel between chapters. But all that is to say, I do love the characters the game presents. I think the world is cool and feels huge, with characters coming from all over it and in support speaking of their homelands. It's great. And while the first trailer for Fortune's Weave brought me nothing but apprehension and worry that Engage is a one-off and we're getting Three Houses for the rest of time now that that's what's popular, this latest direct has me quite intrigued. I don't want to talk too much about it for those of you who want to go in blind, but during the 22-minute direct, I found myself getting more and more on board, especially in the last few minutes. I don't expect this is going to fix every problem I had with Three Houses, especially since some of my problems with Three Houses aren't really problems with the game, but with how I interact with it. But systems look refined, gameplay is intriguing, and while I'm not fully sold on everything and will have to try it to really know what I think, I'm not a doomer about the future of Fire Emblem. Three Houses is a lot like Awakening. It's different from what came before, and that comes with both strengths and weaknesses. But without Awakening, we don't get Fates, Echoes, and Three Houses. And without Three Houses doing as well as it did, we might not have kept getting Fire Emblem game. Fire Emblem Three Houses isn't perfect, and it's probably not even in my top 5 Fire Emblem games. Not that I would publish that list online, I don't want to get killed, but it's important. It's an important game, and while I personally really hope that Fortune's Weave is the last game in the world of Three Houses, that we keep moving on to more anthologies, I also want it to be good. I want it to be great. But beyond that, I want people to like it, and I want people to connect with it, like I connected with Fire Emblem 7 when I was in middle school. The discourse is exhausting, yes, but people are still talking about Three Houses, making fan art or fanfic about Three Houses, and it's happening in droves. I can't and I don't want to take that away from anyone. It's not my favorite, and I don't know how often I will really replay it, but I can't in good faith call it a bad game. Flawed? Sure, but not bad. In order to keep this video as straightforward as I could, I didn't even mention how good the soundtrack is, and the fact that the cutscenes are gorgeous, and just how many of them there are. There are significant strengths to this game, and the idea that Fortune's Weave had more development time and money behind it has me excited for what a second attempt of this style of Fire Emblem game could be. I love this series, and I hope I love Fortune's Weave, because at the end of the day, I want to enjoy the games in the series. But, if I have to, I will just go play Sacred Stones with Erica as a floating eyeball. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.